You ever have that feeling like your car is spending way more time in the shop than it is on the road? You fix one thing and then boom, something else breaks. Well, when you're talking about really complex products like electric vehicles, that frustration isn't just annoying, it's a huge, costly problem. But there's a new strategy that is completely changing the game. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it works. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the hidden conflict that's probably hiding in your warranty right now. Then we'll get into why fixing modern machines can be so ridiculously inefficient. And then we'll get to the good part, a brilliant new strategy. We'll even see how it was tested on an electric vehicle, and of course, check out the amazing results. So let's kick things off with something we've probably all dealt with, the extended warranty. It sounds simple enough, right? But underneath the surface, it actually creates this hidden tug of war. I mean, on paper, an extended warranty is just a safety net. You pay a little extra, and the company promises to fix things if they go wrong. But what's really happening here is it's setting up this subtle, kind of fundamental conflict of interest between you, the owner, and the company that made the product. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. As a user, what do you want? Simple. You want your stuff to work all the time without costing you a fortune, maximum uptime, minimum cost. But for the manufacturer, well, it's a balancing act. They've got to keep you happy, sure, but they also have to watch their bottom line to stay in business. And believe me, those two goals don't always point in the same direction. And that whole conflict? It gets 1,000 times more complicated with modern tech, where you've got all these super critical parts that absolutely have to work together in perfect harmony. Which brings us to this key idea, the multi-part series system. Okay, it sounds kind of technical, but it's a really simple concept. It just means if one little piece fails, the whole thing grinds to a halt. And there is no better example of this than the powertrain in an electric vehicle. Think about it. An EV's powertrain basically boils down to these three heroes: the battery, the controller, and the motor. If the battery has a problem, your car is a very expensive brick. If the motor controller goes down, you're not going anywhere. And if the drive motor fails, well, you get the picture. They all depend on each other, 100%. And this leads us right to the absolute heart of the problem. What happens when we treat the maintenance for all these interconnected parts like they're completely separate, unrelated issues? Well, this is what happens. You get stuck in this old, super inefficient cycle. So picture this. In April, the drive motor needs some work. Car's in the shop. Then, a few months later, in July, it's the motor controller's turn. Back to the shop you go, and then maybe in October, the battery needs servicing. That is 3 separate trips, 3 separate downtimes, 3 separate setup costs, and a whole lot of headaches. Come on, there has to be a better way, right? Thankfully, there is. And this is where a much, much smarter approach comes into play. Researchers have come up with this really innovative strategy to solve this exact problem, and it's called grouping preventative maintenance, or just GPM for short. The idea behind GPM is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Instead of just fixing parts randomly as they break, you intelligently bundle the maintenance for multiple components into a single efficient service appointment. It's like doing one big grocery run instead of going back to the store 3 different times for 3 different things. So, GPM works its magic in 2 really clever ways. First, it syncs up all the maintenance schedules. It finds the part that needs attention most often and makes that the baseline. Everything else gets service at the same time, or at a multiple of that time. And second, it brings in a fair cost-sharing model. If you're a super user who drives way more than average, you might chip in a little bit for that extra wear and tear. It's fair for everyone. Okay, this all sounds fantastic on paper, but does it actually work in the real world? Well, to find out, researchers took this exact model and applied it to our EV powertrain example. So they ran this incredibly detailed simulation. They basically modeled the entire EV powertrain over a 3-year warranty period to see exactly what would happen if a manufacturer decided to use this GPM strategy. So first, they looked at the old way. Total chaos. Each part had its own separate schedule. The motor needed a checkup every 6 months, the controller a little later, the battery a little later than that. And this messy approach led to that big number you see at the bottom, a system cost availability ratio of 4,031. Now think of that number like a golf score for maintenance. The lower it is, the better. And a high score like this, it means you're paying a lot more for a car that's just sitting in the shop. All right, now for the really cool part. Here's what happened when they applied the GPM strategy to that very same system. And honestly, the results are, well, they're pretty incredible. For the EV owner, for you, the driver, that all-important cost-availability ratio just plummeted. By grouping all the maintenance together, the balance of cost to uptime got better by a massive 16.6%. But what about the manufacturer? Did this hurt their bottom line? Not a chance. In fact, it was just the opposite. Because of that fair cost-sharing model for the heavy users, their profit from the warranty service actually went up by over 37%. It's a true win-win. This final scorecard really just puts it all into perspective. Look at that. The total number of separate trips to the shop was cut by more than half, from 10 down to just 4. And that maintenance golf score, it dropped from a painful 40-31 all the way down to 33-62. Less hassle, lower costs, and more time actually driving your car. That's the power of just being smarter about scheduling. And as the researchers themselves put it, this isn't about cutting corners or anything like that. It is a fundamentally better system that just creates more value and, frankly, higher satisfaction for everybody involved. And that's the big takeaway here. This isn't just about cars. Just think about it for a second. What if the airplanes we fly in were maintained with this kind of incredible efficiency? Or what about the critical life-saving equipment in our hospitals? By simply grouping tasks in a more intelligent way, we can make the most important technology in our lives more reliable, more affordable, and more available for all of us.